So he continues on. Bioethics. Okay. So we're faced with a fundamental question. Is man the product of his own labors, or does he depend on God? All right. So bioethics, we are getting into life issues straight up. Fundamental question. Is man the product of his own labors, or does he depend on God? How you answer that question is going to determine your view on things like cloning and genetically modifying embryos. Okay. So this leaves us with a choice between two types of reasoning, he says. Reason open to transcendence or reason closed within immanence. Okay? Two options. You got to choose between those two. So reason closed within immanence, okay, the latter option, it rejects all meaning and value, essentially, at least all transcendent meaning. So what's the meaning of human life? Well, if our reason is closed in within immanence, by the way, means nothing outside of the visible world, essentially. Okay. Well, then there's no transcendent meaning. There's no meaning transcendent that goes above, the end of human life. Okay. And value, again, there's no transcendent value to morality, moral norms, for example. Okay, so that rejects those things, and then it runs up against unanswerable questions. Okay, how could being emerge from nothing? How does something come from nothing? Okay, and then how could intelligence be born from chance? Because what is intelligence? Well, intelligence is the ability to make sense of things. Okay, it involves order. Okay, and consistently coming to correct conclusions about reality using reason. Okay, how does that happen from pure chance, unguided by any kind of intelligence? Okay, so he's getting into really fundamental philosophical questions here. Um, so he's using those to say, in a very brief form, we have to reject reason closed within immanence as unreasonable, okay, or irrational. So we need the perspectives of both faith and reason. Another running theme throughout this document. We need faith. So biotechnology is the clearest expression of technology's supremacy. So some people think in vitro fertilization, embryo research, cloning, all those things are good simply because they're possible, right? This is part of that technical mindset. All right. So this presents new threats on the horizon. He says, quote, to the tragic and widespread scourge of abortion, we may well have to add in the future the systematic eugenic programming of births. Okay. In other words, through either cloning or genetic modification. So you have an embryo, you tweak the genetic makeup in order to get the desired outcome, then you reimplant it, and you basically grow custom human beings. Like we saw, think back to Brave New World. Okay. Okay. At the end of life, then, so the other end of the spectrum, he says, a pro euthanasia mindset is making inroads as an equally damaging assertion of control over life that under certain circumstances is deemed no longer worth living. Okay. Okay, so the beginning of life, end of life. Serious bioethical issues. Both the abortion and eugenic programming, as well as the euthanasia movement, they all deny human dignity and they imply a materialistic and mechanistic view of human life. Okay. They deny the gratuitousness of being. Okay. They are failures to acknowledge the fact that existence, life, is a gift, and there's value in suffering. Okay. And there's dignity even in people who are weak and unable to care for themselves and seemingly unable to contribute to society. They all have that same fundamental human dignity. Creatures made in the image and likeness of God. Okay. All this biotechnology he's talking about, IVF, embryo research, cloning, etc., fail to see that and set us up as masters of life, human life. Love this quote. I know this is going long. I'm sorry, but this is our last class together, so just hang in there. Okay, how can we be surprised by the indifference shown towards situations of human degradation when such indifference extends even to our attitude towards what is and is not human? What is astonishing is the arbitrary and selective determination of what to put forward today as worthy of respect. Insignificant matters are considered shocking, yet unprecedented injustices seem to be widely tolerated. While the poor of the world continue knocking on the doors of the rich, the world of affluence, of wealth, runs the risk of no longer hearing those knocks on account of a conscience that can no longer distinguish what is human. Boom. Blazing. Okay. How can we be surprised when people are indifferent towards the poor people around them? How can we be surprised by that when our indifference extends even to the question of what is and is not human? I think he's talking about the status of embryos, the moral status of embryos. Is an embryo a full human person or not? If we're indifferent towards how we treat embryos, why should we be surprised that we're indifferent towards the poor? Okay, that makes sense that we should be indifferent towards both. So that arbitrary and selective determination of what is worthy of respect. Well, insignificant matters are shocking. Okay, and yet unprecedented injustices seem to be widely tolerated, like abortion or huge food shortages, things like that. Okay. All right, last thing here before the closing quote. Dangers of technical mind. Okay, psychological and neurological reductionism. Okay, this is the tendency to consider the problems and emotions of the interior life from a purely psychological perspective. All right, now, this is not for a second to deny that psychology is a legitimate field of human knowledge. And psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, um, depression medications, those are all legitimate forms of therapy and treatment for psychological issues. Okay. But to say psychology and what's going on in your brain, your neurology, are the only factors in those kinds of situations, that implicitly rejects the immaterial nature of the soul, and it confuses spiritual health with emotional well-being. Okay, like what spiritual health? No. We're talking about just feeling good. Okay. All right. So to ignore the authentic spiritual nature of the human person then leaves an emptiness that we often try to fill with drugs or other addictions. Okay, pornography, whatever it may be. So this is a long quote, but I love it. When he is far from God, man is unsettled and ill at ease. Social and psychological alienation and the many neuroses that afflict affluent societies are attributable in part to spiritual factors. Social and psychological alienation. Think about what he says about isolation in the previous chapter. It's a form of poverty. And the many neuroses. Think about how much anxiety we have as Americans, okay, that afflicts affluent societies, wealthy societies. In part, that's attributable to spiritual factors, okay? Because the new forms of slavery to drugs and the lack of hope into which so many people fall, so despair, suicide, can be explained not only in sociological and psychological terms, but also in essentially spiritual terms. The emptiness in which the soul feels abandoned, despite the availability of countless therapies for body and psyche, leads to suffering. And I would add, sometimes to suicide, right? That total emptiness, that's a normal part of human experience. But when we look at ourselves and we feel that emptiness and we say, this is a matter of what's going on in my brain chemistry, in my psyche, then I go and I get depression medications and I get therapy and it's still not working. That emptiness is still there. That might legitimately just be a spiritual emptiness because we are made with God-sized, God-shaped holes in our hearts that only God can fill, right? But if we deny that, we don't acknowledge the true spiritual nature of that crisis, then we'll lose hope because we've got the best therapies out there, right? I'm getting counseling. I'm getting medication and I'm still not satisfied. I'm still not fulfilled. If I think that's all there is, I'm going to lose hope. Okay. It says this is a spiritual crisis, authentically. We need God above all things. And if we lose sight of that, there's real danger there. Okay. So he says development must include spiritual growth, or else we're not developing every part of the human person. Obviously, we're body soul composites. And we lose sight of the transcendent goal of human activity. Okay. All right, final quote here. All right. It says, without God, man neither knows which way to go nor even understands who he is. In the face of the enormous problems surrounding the development of peoples, which almost make us yield to discouragement, we find solace in the sayings of our Lord Jesus Christ, who teaches us, Apart from me, you can do nothing. And then encourages us, I am with you always to the close of the age. As we contemplate the vast amount of work to be done, we are sustained by our faith that God is present alongside those who come together in his name to work for justice. Now that's from the conclusion, so you didn't read that, all right? Okay, so major themes, right? We need faith for authentic human development, which is the development of all people and every part of the person, okay? Every theme of Catholic social teaching you can find somewhere in this document, right? Okay, I hope that this was a spiritually enriching study, right? We really dug into this document. I hope that that was satisfying intellectually and spiritually both. So please, if you have any questions or comments or you want to talk about the document further, feel free to let me know. We can set up an individual Zoom call if you want to. I think my office hours are just about done. They're not going to be going during finals week, I don't think. But on a more personal note, I have enjoyed having you as a junior class. Um, Usually the last couple of months, which we missed, are chaotic and it's very hard to keep order, but it's also a lot of fun because we get to spend a lot of time just talking. And we didn't get that this year, and I'm sorry for that. So I hope you have a great summer. You guys still have to do the project, so I'll make another video for the project to explain that. But yeah. All right. I hope to see you all in the fall and not be wearing masks and to be able to, yeah, just catch up. All right. Take care, guys.